Hello everyone, welcome to week 9, DECODE Silicon Valley Startup Success. This week the topic is Emerging Technologies Serve on the Tide of Tech, Business Model, Business Validation, and Education. Here's our agenda for today. For the first hour, we'll have a first chat with our guest speaker, and then the second section of our class today will be the Q&A session around 20 minutes. And then we'll have a very special event for today. Will be 30 minutes for students' pitches and feedback for your semester project. And the last 10 minutes will be for logistics. And then I'm very pleased to welcome Gina and Shef, and then I will pass it on to Shef.
Thanks, Serena, and thanks, Shuo, for having me. My name is Shef. I'm the partner at IOVC, where I work with Shuo on the investment front. I'm also the regional general manager for Rescale, a Series C startup that works very closely with Microsoft globally. So there's a lot of interesting things we can talk about there. And it's my pleasure to present Gina, the CTO of Microsoft US, to join us today to share with us her insight and her experience. Welcome, Gina, to DECODE.
Well, thanks. Happy to be here.
So Gina, to start, I'd love for you to kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself and how do you become the CTO of Microsoft US, your journey in the tech industry for the past while.
My journey in the tech industry started about 30 years ago. So I've been, at this a long time. I majored in electrical engineering and I went to college at North Carolina A&T State University, so graduate of a historically Black college. And then I headed off to IBM, where I had worked throughout college as an intern in hardware development and software development back then, and just joined the organization in our federal business, where I was, a systems engineer on fast attack submarines, doing code for Navy tactical systems. And that evolved from there. I was probably 18 months into my career when my specialty area was digital signal processing. I was a specialist in underwater acoustics, and then IBM sold the business off. And so I had to regroup and figure out something to be special in. So one of the things I would say on your journey is figure out how to stay ahead of the curve, which I ended up doing with the rest of my career. When I left that federal part of the business, I went into hardware development, and then I went into research. My research area is conversational speech technologies. I spent time in our hardware business, our software business, in our global consulting business, in our emerging technologies business. So I've had a wide range of being in different parts of the organization in my career at IBM. And I've been every kind of CTO. I've been a CTO in product organizations. I've been a CTO in sales organizations. And I've been a CTO in consulting organizations. So, my journey was about learning what was important to enterprises across multiple industries. And I got out of the lab, right? Certainly when you start your career, you're doing a lot of development, but I got out of that lab and spent a lot of time with customers, and that would inform my career. So probably 4 years into my career, I went into a management role, beginning to lead larger and larger teams. Back then about 20 people, then ultimately, about 2,000 people globally, doing consulting services in cloud consulting services. And I was having a great career at IBM, and then Microsoft came calling, and we'd probably been talking, for 5 or 6 years. Wasn't really interested in roles until this role came up to be the CTO for Microsoft US. And Microsoft was on a journey of really getting closer to enterprise customers, understanding how to help them on a journey to digital transformation. And so I've been doing that since about 2019.
Oh, that's super cool. And I actually just wanted to follow up on what you mentioned about career progression. Like you've been taking different roles in different product groups, in different directions. Some of them are, due to environment. Some of them you probably chose proactively. How do you think about the progression? Like, is there any metric you use, or what makes you decide it's time to, make a change?
Yeah, earlier in my career, it really was around interest, right? It was, there's always something cool and interesting to do. And I wanted to do something every 12 to 18 months. You can do that in software. That was a little harder in hardware, where I had to stay probably 18 to 24 months to get through a cycle, to really prove that you know how to design something and can deliver something. There's part of in my career where I was very intentional about what I wanted to do next. I wanted to build a set of skills that I could use across all our businesses, right? So I wanted experiences in hardware. I wanted experiences in software. I wanted experiences in research, because I wanted to be able to bring all of that together and understand about what's next. Not just about what we're doing today and releasing today or launching today, but how do we now position that for what could be next? And that led me to spend a lot of time customer facing and understanding the big problems in industries so that I can be informed about what could be next. Because the great thing about these organizations and the business that we're in, you can certainly do tech for cool tech, but we're in a profit-making business. And so it has to be something that you could also sell. And so being able to articulate, these are the problems in an industry, these are the kinds of things and solutions that are going to be needed by companies in the future, allowed me to come back and be a voice inside my organizations about where we should be investing, where we should be applying our research, where should we be looking at partnerships to create end-to-end solutions with our technology and our strategic partners' technologies.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You mentioned the cool tech. I think for a lot of students, when they graduate and think about tech industry, they think about the Googles, the Facebook, and the Snap of the consumer part. But in reality, I think the enterprise business probably hires just as much, if not more, companies like IBM, Microsoft, Salesforce, etc. How do you think, is there a difference for students or young professionals when they're walking into a B2B career trajectory? How do you think that's different from if they're in a B2C kind of role?
Yeah, I think B2B role, and of course, I'll be probably a little prejudiced, and since I've been in working with large enterprise customers most of my career, right? So as you think about B2B roles, and especially you think about today, everyone's talking about digital transformation. And digital transformation is really the intersection of tech and business needs. So you have to be able to articulate what big problem that you're going to solve with this tech. And so, as students are thinking about B2B versus B2C, you have to think about how are you going to be able to articulate to a business leader who's going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into those ideas about changing their organizations, about changing their trajectory of the company. Then you really have to understand what that company does and what that industry is about, and inform yourself not just about the technology, but about the industry. And so I think that's really very interesting to be able to now position yourself for later in your career, right? Because you can gain a lot of experience that now allows you to have a perception and an insight into what could be important or what could be gaps. And those gaps and filling those gaps could lead to entrepreneurial pursuits. And so thinking about your career and where you're going to launch and where you position yourself, I think there's an interesting way of spending time in organizations who focus on the large enterprise organizations, so that you can have a very good appreciation for, what are the problems that could lend themselves to great business ideas later.
Yeah, I think you mentioned digital transformation. And could you give our students kind of example of what in reality looks like? How does a company or a corporation adapt to it, and what come out of it?
Yeah, I'd start with digital transformation is not digitizing, right? Sometimes people think about it's just putting things, on digitizing the current information. Digital transformation is really the blend of your technology advances to be able to support your business strategy. It's the blend of people, processes, tools, and technologies that help you take your business in a new direction. And what I tell companies is, when we talk about transformation, is you have to think about, if you're creating a new product, a new service, or a new revenue stream, right? Then that's transformation. If you're just changing something or adding some capability to what you're currently doing, you're really not transforming, right? You could be advancing, you could be growing, you could be progressing, but you're not transforming. So if you think about transformation, think about it in those terms. Is it a definitely new product or new service, a new revenue stream? Is it taking the company into an adjacency in a different industry? Is it combining something that they hadn't done before and creating a whole new business dynamic or paradigm? Is it allowing them to compete in a new industry or in a new geography? So it's really, again, the combination of those business and technology strategies coming together to make something really new and compelling for the business.
Yeah, so just to summarize.
So I think of it.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. And if you think about it in a couple of industries, right? So if I think about in education or healthcare or financial services, it's really the dynamic of, if I think about banking, right? Now everyone banks online, right? So that was a transformation, 7, 8, 9 years ago, when people were, always going into brick and mortar stores. Now people pretty much bank online or on an app, right? And so thinking about changing the paradigm of how businesses interact with their customers, how business interacts with their other ecosystem partners, that's a example of the kinds of transformations that I work with and talk to customers about on a regular basis.
Yeah, just to double down on that, within education, like, how do you see the application of technologies like artificial intelligence or VR or blockchain? How do they actually apply in those industries, and how are companies actually using them commercially today?
Yeah, one of the cool things about education, in the past, 18, 19 months, right? The world had to figure out how we were going to educate students in all levels remotely. And so this was an opportunity. I always say those kinds of quick shifts gives innovation a push. And so in education space, so think about the opportunity to use AI in a way to create personalized education plans. So it's not just putting your lesson plans or putting classes online. We were already able to do that. Using AI in education is about understanding where a student is, understanding their cognitive progression, understanding if they have some delays or deficiencies that you can help accelerate their success with AI. I can monitor their success. I can measure how well they're doing. I can help measure their even comprehension, and in a way that today's educational tools or curriculums typically can't measure that, right? You know, in today's testing, it's really about memorization versus comprehension. We can use data and AI tools to really understand comprehension and build gaps. And so just imagine education of the future when you can create textbooks that are really personalized to the students, or tutoring plans that are really personalized to the students, because you understand a lot more about their level of comprehension. You understand about their, you know, cognitive processes, and you understand about how they can interact. And we can leverage things that we know of today, like virtual assistants, that can help be a part of that dynamic. And then using virtual reality to create you know, spaces where students and teachers, or students and tutors, can work together. It's not just an online video chat. It's really a virtual space where we meet together, and as similar as if we were in a classroom together. And so being able to use those kind of technology and systems, we'd be able to create classrooms of the future and think about how we can really move forward the paradigm of online education or virtual learning, but do it in a way that now it's not just testing periodically, but you're measuring along the way whether or not a student is successfully progressing.
So where do you think the future of education or EdTech would look like in 10 years? What kind of experience would you envision students have? Maybe within Zoom, maybe within Oculus? What's your thought on that?
Or Teams, you know.
Yeah.
Don't forget Teams.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think education of the future is going to grow and expand. I'm excited about the opportunity that these now remote learning platforms allow us to get access to the best in the world. So before, a student would only have access to professors or teachers in their schools or in their district. Now we know that we can use these platforms to get the best and the brightest, no matter where they exist in the world, and create these spaces where we can co-create together, and create these spaces in which we can now have that interaction with students, or with the experts or the subject matter expert, in a way that we couldn't before. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing education in the future begin to be able to now help accelerated students continue to accelerate further. They're now not, they're not limited by where they are in their school systems or in their school districts. Now they can be, having an opportunity to work with the best professors. It's able to accelerate our ability to do research. I'm a firm believer that research at the undergraduate level is something that we should be investing in. It's not just a graduate course. We should be doing that in the high school, secondary school education level. And so education of the future is really pushing down those what would have been senior level or college level processes down into, to secondary schools, into high schools and junior highs. And so we're accelerating people's educational growth and their learning and their ability. And so by the time they're in college, they're really expanding those ideas. And so we can do that. We have the opportunity to create the environment in which they can accelerate in those ways.
Well, sounds like in 10 years, we'll have a lot more young Sheldon.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we'll need that, because then we'll be competing with general AI versus narrow AI, right? So we're going to need a lot of young Sheldons.
Yeah, absolutely. That actually, on the other side of the equation, it was more about, I guess people care about education for the general public or the underrepresented. And in your own experience, when you're going through education, you are able to get a degree in STEM. But even today, female or minority in STEM is underrepresented significantly. How did you pull it off during your time? And what makes you decide, like, I want to be in the tech and the science space?
Yeah, so we have several problems that we need to address to be able to democratize access to education, right? And one of the biggest things is the digital divide. What we've learned throughout the pandemic is when everybody had to go remote, not everybody had access to broadband. And so this remote learning didn't work for everybody. And those everybody are typically people in underserved underserved communities and underrepresented represented minorities. And so we have a lot of work to do in this country to be able to create an environment where everyone has access to these digital platforms, or it's just not going to work. So there's some essential work that has to be done for us to accelerate that, to ensure that we have that level of access in broadband and the access to digital skills and digital capabilities afforded to everyone, right? And so that's a great start. My own journey, I was pretty lucky to grow up in a household with a teacher, right? And so education was a part of our life. My mother was a teacher, and so she, pushed me, encouraged me. I took the test for her class, when she was teaching fourth grade and I was in first grade, I was taking the class. So, I was always being challenged and pushed, and so that was always encouraging because I loved school. And then I went to my high school. I went to the North Carolina School of Science and Math. And so that is a secondary education that's focused on, higher accelerated students that were gifted in math and science. And so it was natural to me to now take that education and go into the STEM fields. And certainly when I was in high school, I was, managing between, am I going to major in physics or am I going to go into medicine or engineering? And I chose electrical engineering. But unfortunately, now all these years later, it's still too few women in tech. It's still too few women going into STEM fields. And so the work that we have to do is encourage them and be, I'm always out trying to be a role model and show what does a career in STEM look like? What does that journey look like? What are some of the opportunities that are ahead of you if you invest in a career in STEM, and who are these people who are doing it, right? People have a view of, technologists or scientists, and we have to make it real for them. And so that they can get comfortable about that journey, they can be comfortable about their success along that journey. And certainly there's a lot more work that we have to do and support and encourage more underrepresented minorities and certainly more women in the STEM fields.
Yeah, and even within that, like for the current female that is working in tech, you would mostly find them in design or marketing. If you only look at core engineering, there's even fewer of them. But you came from a very hardcore R&D and technology route. Is there any particular challenges that you had to overcome? And for our students here who are going into the engineering route, any warnings, signs ahead?
Well, look, I won't call it warning signs. I say push through, right? If it's your interest, don't allow anyone to keep you from it. Unfortunately, when I was coming through, It wasn't as warm and inviting and inclusive, right? You know, sometimes the boys didn't want to make room for the ladies in hardware development or even software development back then. But I think this changing certainly today. It is more inviting, it is more inclusive. But what I would say about that journey is, listen, this is your dream. And I encourage people to be bold and courageous and find somebody that can help and be in this support, a system for you, but don't let anybody ever keep you from your dream. If it was easy, everybody would do it. So just know there are going to be some challenges along the way, but there's always support along the way too. You've now met me. I've been on this journey a long time. You know, reach out and we can certainly make connections across the network, you know, that we've built over these careers. But I always encourage people to say, how important is it to you? And for me, the journey was important to me. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be successful in big tech companies. You know, for a long time, IBM was my dream, and I wanted to rise up in the ranks in the company. And then, you know, I joined Microsoft. And so being in the top tech companies on the planet was important to me, and I wasn't gonna be denied that. And I wasn't going to let someone keep me from it. So it does take a little boldness, a little courageousness, but so I also had a lot of support along the way and people who saw my potential and certainly encouraged me and supported me.
Oh, that's very encouraging words. Thank you, Gina. And I'd like to take a step back from education and just talk about technology broadly. So especially in B2B, as you mentioned, it's not just about having the cool tech, but also about how technology enables business, how to essentially go from technology to bottom line. And we see a lot of new innovation in regarding to how business makes money. And I think in the past probably 1 to 2 years, the concept of open source is getting a lot of traction with Databricks, with the PingCap, and a few others. I'd love to ask you about how you think about open source. Why is it getting so much traction these days? And where do you think it's going?
Yeah, so one of the biggest companies that I will mention about open source that, I grew up when, Linux was becoming a big part of operating systems, right? There was the battle of this new thing that was coming out. And I spent a lot of time with colleagues at Red Hat throughout the years and getting access to understanding, how people make money with open source, right? People think it's a hard way to make money, but 20-some years later, Red Hat has proven that, and the companies that you mentioned have proven that the focus of a open source consortium can be about innovation and should be about adding to the core or the kernel the best ideas and contributing to the best ideas. And so, so there are companies who believe that they can build products that are only proprietary. But what I like about open source is it keeps the innovation alive in the software development process. It keeps innovation alive in how we interact as technologists. And even the most heavily focused proprietary software companies are also participating in open source forms. So there's value in that creativity and that innovation that we have to thrive on, being able to launch some of the best products in the world.
Yeah, and just FYI for students who might not be familiar with this history, but Berkeley is actually a pretty key part of the history of Linux with the BSG and the whole drama with Unix. It's pretty cool. So definitely check it out. And Yeah, just coming back to the open source. I know like for Red Hat and maybe for Docker as well, kind of the key way of how they make money is we have like this open source that everyone can use for free, but we also have like the enterprise edition and we also have the professional service. So yeah. So it took them a while to actually figure out this is how they make money. And obviously like Red Hat and IBM are very close together. So how do you see this, progression? Because open source wasn't really, figuring everything out until like very, very recently. So how do you see that progress in the industry?
Well, yeah, I mean, I know today we have models that says that will accelerate that. So, in the early days when they hadn't worked through, how do we meter this? How do we now add value? How do we create strategic partnerships? That's also a big a way revenue is generated with open source companies. Is how do I make your product better with my kernel, with my technology? And so in thinking about that and thinking about how you create an opportunity to have constant influx of innovation, but in a way that now creates a revenue generation model for that innovation. You have some things, as you described, some things in the core that are for free, but then the added capabilities, the ability to co-create and co-innovate together, those things cost, because those things can be used to create new products or new services that allow you to generate revenue. And so think about strategic partnerships, think about added capabilities for B2B or large enterprise companies. Think about organizations that will now extend that product and allow you to create a ecosystem around your open source product, and then that's the revenue generation model that you'll continue to see in successful open source companies.
Very cool. And I know like a lot of small open source projects actually just start with some students and their project on GitHub, and they perfect and refine it over the years, and one day become a startup. So definitely give it a try. So other than open source, we are also hearing a lot of talk about ESG these days. And I know like Microsoft with Azure has been pushing a lot of emphasis on ESG. Can you let us know a little bit about what it is and how is it applied in the tech industry?
Yeah, so one of the things, and you'll hear it talking about at boards these days too, environmental and social good, right? So you want to talk about sustainability because we're in a place now where we've done a bad job, up until now. It's protecting our planet, and we gotta do better, right? We got to do better about the planet that we're going to leave to those coming to generations behind us. And ESG also is about things about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So those are things about creating more inclusive environments, creating democratization around access. And so when you think about your environmental, you think about your social, and you think about the responsibility of organizations to culture, to the planet, and to creating environments for growth. And so it's becoming something that leaders have to worry about. It's becoming something that's on the mind of board leaders, board members, and it's on the minds of companies that are contributing to the success of us going forward. Why it's important to tech companies is because of the carbon footprint that we all leave around, and that we have to have our part in that responsibility in that carbon footprint and that sustainability that we can use to make sure that we're doing our fair share, and that we can also help invest in companies and helping other companies that are our customers think through leveraging technology, think through leveraging strategies that makes that something that not just one or two companies are focused on, that we're having companies across multiple industries focus on, so that we can all be successful.
Yeah, so how do you think the concept of ESG, right now it's all in the conversation of boardroom. How do you see it trickle down into corporate behavior and then into corporate purchases? Yeah.
I think it's trickling down in corporate behavior, because when it's important to your board members, it becomes important to the C-suite across the organization. And then it creates the ability for you to create strategies around governance on how you're going to spend your money as a company, and who you're going to invest in, and who you're going to do business with, and how you're going to support this very important supply chain that is going to be an important way of us sustaining our goals and our focus in sustainability. And so those things are trickling down through organizations, through governance practices, through consortiums that are being created about working together on those common goals to lead us successfully through our, ESG.
So when people think about ESG, they usually think about how corporates source their energy, right? Switching from maybe thermal to renewables. Other than that, are there other big areas that people are looking at, especially from like an entrepreneurial opportunity perspective?
Yeah, so think about ESG in the way that if there's something that, in the early days, the small piece about it is recycling, right? And then it was, how are you building these buildings that you're using, across the planet? Are you, LEED certified, right? So are you, what are you creating in your company, or what are you using in your company that can leave a footprint that is not focused on a sustainable future? So it's not just the fuels, it's every piece of the footprint that organizations have to think about. So your real estate organization has to think about it. Your health organization has to think about it. Your organization on supplier diversity and supplier selection has to think about those things. And so think about the entire ecosystem around what you're investing in, what you're supporting, and what you're not supporting. And then, one of the big things that people sometimes miss is that focus on real estate, and that focus on creating sustainable buildings, and focus on using smart devices to be able to save energy. So those, it can be quite complex, because there's something about the footprint that is probably in a lot of things that we are doing, and so it's important that the strategy put forth by these companies take a look at all of those intricate pieces that could be affected by it.
Yeah, so if we take a step back and look at, you obviously, in your role as CTO of Microsoft, you talk to other business leaders, other technology leaders across industries. What are their priorities nowadays? Like, what are they looking at? How do they rank, the issues that they need to face of digital transformation, like ESG, diversity? What will their list look like?
All the above, right? So there are lists of, but number one, in any of the companies that I'm working with or have the opportunity to have a conversation about transformation, are the people. Because none of these things work if you don't have a sustainable workforce, if you don't have a healthy workforce. And people are creating and investing in the health of their organization. And when I say health, it's not just, physical health, it's also mental health. It's also education. It's also preparing people for the future. So number one, people are focused on how is their workforce thriving? And you hear a lot of people and companies asking questions and needing help around the future of work. What is it going to look like? We all were forced into being remote, and now people want to get back to the office. Is it safe? And employees are having conversations and making decisions about whether or not they're going to stay with enterprises that don't allow them to choose how they work. And so you have these conversations about a hybrid work force and a hybrid workplace and those kinds of schedules. And so people are thinking about their employees, or thinking about how they work and how they engage, with customers and how they engage with each other. And then, of course, they're thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion. You've seen over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of focus on race and equity in this country, and it's resonated around the world. That's certainly on the minds of leaders and the cultures that they create. They have to make safe spaces for everyone in their organizations to be able to come to work and do their best work. And so you have to be in a safe place. You have to be in an inclusive place. When you're bringing your talent to that organization, you have to know that that's important to them. And so culture is tremendously important to organizations. And then certainly the bottom line, because they have stockholders and they have investors, and they have to have a profitable business to support all of these organizations and to support all these employees. People are focusing on, are we doing the right thing about the strategy of our business? Do we have a compelling M&A strategy? Do we understand what we need to do in terms of our product roadmaps, or our solutions roadmaps, or our services roadmaps? Are we in a different business after the pandemic than we were before? And so that's on the leaders' minds, and understanding and thinking through, what can I do about the health of my business? And am I going to be one of the business that thrives after this really big digital transformation? Am I on the cusp of that transformation, or am I going to be somebody's M&A target? And so that's really on an important conversation that's happening in executive rooms and in board rooms about the future of organizations, and all of that's important. You can't just focus, unfortunately, on one of those. You have to keep all of those things top of mind, and understanding where your industry is and how you're able to apply emerging technologies. And that's why conversations with people like me as a CTO come into play, because after they're thinking about all of those great business thoughts, they're saying, how do I underpin my success with understanding what technologies can help accelerate my strategy, and what are those things that could be something that if I'm not paying attention, could mean that we're not successful going forward. And so they have to have input and advisory on now bringing in technology as a really core piece of their business strategy, to not just survive the future, but really thrive and transform.
Yeah. So it's interesting you mentioned stock as like a driver for business behavior. When you first joined Microsoft, did you anticipate that it's going to be 2 trillion in 2 years?
Well, of course I did. That's why they were seeking me, right? So I think when I joined Microsoft, the stock price was 145. So thank you, everybody who are Microsoft stockholders. I think it might be 3:10 today. I'm not saying it's me, but hey, it's coincidental. You know, I joined Microsoft because I love the culture. I knew it was definitely on a journey to do something exciting and making a mark. You know, I've been lucky to be a part of 2 amazing organizations. I have nothing negative to say about my time at IBM and about what we put into the marketplace and the culture there. And so, you know, I just been tremendously, you know, an embarrassment of riches in terms of the choices that I've gotten to do in big tech.
So what is that one thing that you look at Microsoft and you decided, wow, that's great culture? What's that indicator?
You know, one of the things, you know, having conversations, when I came to Microsoft, I was already an executive. So really the leadership around investing in people and culture and growth. What was very impressive, though, for me is in the investment in democratizing access. You know, as a part of the journey that we're on at Microsoft, it was about making sure that access to healthcare or access to financing or access to education was something that we're using our technology and our products to create for people. And then the mission about empowering people to be successful and businesses to be successful. So not just businesses, a lot of people just focusing on the business to business, but the empowering the success is really about people and businesses. And so really to be a part of that and knowing the investment that we make in disaster recovery and the investment that we make in having accelerating vaccines and the investment that we make in accelerating startups. And that's an important part of looking at the entire culture that you're going to be a part of in an organization.
Yeah, so for students who are looking at what companies to join, you know, any indications for non-executives, you know, what to look for?
Yeah, and you know, so one of the things I would say, you know, when you join a company, my view was I was going to be joining somewhere I was going to grow. And so when you think about what your choices are, think about what you want to gain out of that experience. I wanted to join a company that had multiple parts of the business because I knew I was going to want to move. I wasn't going to want to stay in hardware for 10 years or software for 10 years or research. I wanted to do it all. And so if you know you're that person that you're going to want to try new things, you're going to want to experience all that your career could bring, you want to look at a company that can bring that to you. Now, there's a lot more movement today than when I started my career. People aren't thinking about going to a company for 25 years anymore, right? So one of the things that I would say invest in, what's a great place to start? What's a great place that in 3 to 5 years, I'm going to get some amazing experiences and learnings that I can take somewhere else? And what's a great place that is going to invest in me as much as I invest in them? So when you're on these interviews, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, because you want to know that you're going to go to an organization that's really going to invest in you and your overall lifelong learning, because you never stop learning. Even when the classes stop, when you go to work, you're still learning. You're still learning about the next set of technologies or the next roadmap, and you're expanding yourself as a leader. So go to a place that's going to invest in that so that you can make sure that your journey is supported.
Awesome. And I just wanted to pause here for the class. If you have questions for Gina, feel free to text in the chat, and we'll pick a few for Gina, because we also have the presentations coming up. I just wanted to be cautious of Gina's time as well. Yeah, so we have a question that I think is, yeah, so let me ask about this first. What's your thoughts or experience like transitioning from engineering to leadership? What's the tick moment?
Yeah, I've had my first leadership role 2 years into my career. So I became the lead engineer on a submarine project. And I will tell you, early in my career, I was like, okay, people that manage are the people who just don't have enough technical skills, right? And so I learned a little bit
Yep.
and grew up along that journey that wasn't true. And so I had the opportunity to say, in a leadership role or in a technical leadership role, I could increase my impact. And I got excited about that. So I wasn't just going to be doing my part of the project, which was, you know, developing passive narrowband and broadband for submarine systems. I was going to be responsible for all of the systems and I had to understand how those pieces work together. And so, you know, when you start your career and you have one subsystem, you just need to know that and who's the inputs and outputs. But when I went into the lead role, I had to know how all of those things work together. I had to understand how that was going to relate into the entire system working together in a production environment. I had to be able to communicate that to the customer and work with the chief engineer on the Navy systems side. And so, you know, those different transitions, I got excited about not just my personal work, but how I was also going to develop the other engineers on the team and how their understanding of the entire system could work for our benefit. If you know a little bit more about the entire subsystem, how you can be even a better engineer. And so being able to have a taste of that early in my career, a taste of coaching and mentoring other engineers, you know, then put me on that leadership journey. I got excited about managing larger and larger organizations. I got excited about setting the vision about where we could go together. And then, you know, so I left behind that notion that, you know, people who were in management positions just weren't as good technologists as the ones that weren't. And I'm glad that I matured a bit and allowed my eyes to open up to that.
Yeah, so I actually want to double down on that because I think this is such a popular and pervasive question from engineers. So I think there is a comfort in, you know, being very good at coding or technology, in knowing that this is why you are irreplaceable. And when they think about maybe moving to a management or leadership role, then it suddenly feels like, oh, why am I special then? Can you, speak to how you gain comfort in your role as a manager, and how do you think about why you are irreplaceable and how do you build on that?
Yeah, I'd say one of the things that you want to think about is leadership. People often think about management and then they mix manager and leader interchangeably, and they're not, right? A manager is just managing a set of tasks. They might, manage a project. A leader is investing in your growth. A leader is setting a vision. A leader is someone who's going to create a culture in an organization where people are excited about working with them and following that vision. And so when you think about translating yourself from a great technologist and engineer to a great leader, right? Because those things make you important in an organization. A leader is someone you can put anywhere. One of the things that was important to me as I was a part of my development was, while I had great experience in hardware and software development, one of the amazing things that one of my mentors did was send me into consulting services, because he knew that I was going to need to be able to talk to customers and to learn how to talk to C-suite. And that was a way of building another set of skills and capabilities that was going to broaden my leadership ability, leadership acumen. And so I invite us, and one of the things that I do when I coach and mentor engineers who are great engineers, one, learn to communicate.
Hi, Gina. Hi, Gina. I'm not sure if it's my earphone or other people also hear it, but I think you're cutting off a little bit. Could you try that again?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
No, I think your voice is still breaking off quite distorted. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. How do we do this? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's still a little bit distorted. Maybe the mic is not very well plugged in.
Yeah, I'm using the computer mic, so
oh, awesome.
I don't have a separate mic.
Awesome. yeah, now it's working. Great.
Okay, great. So one of the things I encourage engineers to do is learn to communicate. Sometimes as engineers and developers that we're focused on the work and we want that work to speak for us, but we need to be able to also have a conversation with the business leader. We need to have a conversation and understanding the finances of the project that we're working on. So allow yourself to grow those skills. So, and that makes that transition to leadership all that much easier for you.
Very cool. And did you plan on just becoming in a leadership role when you join, or did you kind of thought progress? Because like nowadays you can actually get very far with just being good with technology.
With tech, right? You can grow a career on just technology. I knew early on, because I was a summer intern and a co-op with IBM. I always knew I wanted to be an IBM executive. I just didn't know what path I was going to take, whether it would be distinguished engineer or fellow or a business executive. And so, so I knew those two paths were available to me. I didn't know until I got a little further into my career which of those paths I would take.
Got it. And what do you think about, so like in your role as CTO, obviously you'll have a huge group of people working for you. Some of them may be not technical route. So what do you think of those who are coming into the tech a little bit late, or maybe not in a hard technical role? Like, how do you think their career can look like in the tech world?
Yeah, there takes a lot of people and a lot of different kind of skills to make projects successful. And so, people with project management skills, people with financial skills, people with marketing skills, people with design skills. One of the key things that I've done on all of my teams, even when I was in CTO roles, I needed people who were great innovative thinkers. And so I hire musicians, I hire English majors, I hire artists who can really push engineers out of that comfort zone into a more creative space. And so it's important that in these environments where what's important is great new ideas, that you don't just think that those ideas only come from people with deep technical backgrounds. Some of the best ideas on projects that I've had come from people without a technical background that ask questions about, well, why doesn't it do this? Or wouldn't it be cool if it did that? And then that encourages us to really think creatively about what's next.
Another student asked about business models, especially with cloud. So how did you think about, for example, services based on Azure? What kind of pricing models for the service, not for Azure, could there be?
Yeah, so one of the things, as you think about cloud computing and why it, grew and so now you have centralized functions and you want to be able to use services that are on demand and available to you. What's great about making money in that is that you can meter that service, or you can meter that capacity that's used, right? And so that became that cloud computing became now the underpinning of these great SaaS business models that are growing. And people don't want to invest in their own infrastructure. They really want to invest in the outcome or the solution that you're providing them, a service. And so think about those models. And even as you're thinking about new businesses, thinking about the things that people don't want to invest in. Hardware takes a lot, is costly, it takes a lot to manage. But if people want to buy outcomes and they want to buy access to a solution that is going to help them create those outcomes more efficiently, more effectively. And so you can create great business models out of that now paradigm that we're in that people want things served up to them. And then creating the right kind of menu or that right kind of portfolio of services that they can consume from you is what will make a great cloud model or SaaS model a great business model for your organization as you're going to create it.
Yeah, I see a lot of questions about career development. I'm gonna try to put them together. So a lot of students are asking about how to acquire the right skills as you progress through the careers. Like earlier, when you're students, are you wishing that you will get more like design skills or other non-technical skills? And how did you obtain the business knowledges that is acquired in the leadership roles as you transition from more technical to more leadership roles?
Yeah, I say, as I said before, be bold, be courageous, push yourself. I acquired skills outside of my core capabilities through some rotational assignments, through some stretch assignments. Before I took the leap to leave technology, there's always, since I was at a tech company, there was always an underpinning of technology to all my jobs. But one of the things that I was encouraged to and push myself to do is, take a consulting role. And I turned out I loved it. Or take a finance and operations job. So I learned more about what the money is. Turned like I didn't like it, but now I know how the money's made, right? Or
how do you not like money?
That is, yeah. or take a job in an area where you can learn something. So most organizations have the ability to have rotational assignments. There's also nights and weekends that you're going to invest in learning something new that is going to be an important part of your learning. One of the key things that I did is I had coaches and mentors that would let me know what kinds of skills, or I asked them questions about what skills that they needed to make these executive level decisions. And then I quite intentionally built a plan of managing non-technical people, or taking roles where I would not be able to lean on my technical ability, that I had to do something else to improve my leadership, improve my negotiation, improve my ability to manage other leaders. And so you wanted to make sure you take the time in investing in asking individuals, what is that set of skills that can help me be successful here? And then put yourself in a position where you're doing it either formally or informally to acquire those skills.
So it sounds like one should groom themselves to the person they want to be, ideally a real person in real life, right, that you can look up to.
Yeah. And I say it's many people, right? So it's not just pick one. I picked a lot of different people people that had global experience. And then I started taking my, first international assignments, different things. So look at who's successful and look at the things that you want to personally learn in addition to what is successful in the company, but also what did you personally want to do? I wanted to be able to be a global leader. I wanted to live outside of the country and lead in that culture and not from the US, right? And so those are some things that I was intentional about saying I wanted that experience. And so that was also, not just professionally a growth opportunity, but really personally some growth opportunities for me as well.
Very cool. And I think students should definitely learn from that and try to groom themselves to whatever future roles they want to look like. And yeah, I like this question. So what do you think about the untapped market for cloud? As you know, like North America, Europe, East Asia probably have higher adoptions. What about, Latin America or Southeast Asia? Where do you see those market grow in terms of cloud?
Well, I think there's going to be some growth in, so think about industries that are going to grow in those geographies, right? Financial services, healthcare. And so as we begin to think about industry clouds, then in geographies that aren't looking at cloud growth today, we're going to see an uptick. We're going to, organizations are now putting together industry-related clouds. So those are some large banks in Latin America. There's large healthcare organizations that are growing in Latin America. So think about the industries that are going to take hold in those geographies, and then how cloud is important in those industries. And then that's where I think you're going to start seeing growth. You're going to start seeing growth also in payment companies and digital pay, especially, so those kinds of things are going to spur on also cloud growth in geos that may not have taken off yet.
Yeah, and we have another question about the technology side, especially as Microsoft and other big tech companies become the backbone of the everyday life that we live in. How do you think about the technology companies' responsibility for the security and the experience of our day-to-day life? Like, as you know, Facebook had an outage a few days ago. How do we view this? Is this going to happen again just regularly, or are we doing something to improve on that?
Yeah, so one of the things I think you're going to see before it gets better, it's going to get a little worse, right? Security is going to be, very important for enterprises across the business. You see Microsoft investing a lot in security, investing a lot in increasing cybersecurity talent in the marketplace, investing a lot into now thinking about security in a different way. So moving away from passwords, because what you've seen is a lot of ransomware attacks, and you're seeing a lot of success that the bad guys are having with these security attacks. So when people get success, there becomes more and more bad guys wanting to get at some of that money, right? And so we are going to now, in this great new digital world and revolution and transformation that we're talking about, we open ourselves to what's impacting a digital enterprise who isn't secure are these cybersecurity attacks. So one of the things that's so important is working with organizations who now understand security from the ground up, from the substrate level to the hardware level, all the way up through the application level. And so organizations who can understand how to look at your security posture, understand what are those things that you need to think about in governance and processes, understand how to create a secure enterprise. And organizations like Microsoft and others are investing certainly in that, because that's a responsibility in those technologies that we bring to bear, that we are we're making sure that those are adding to the security of your enterprise. And then also the knowledge and advisory knowledge that we bring to bear to help you secure your enterprise and understand what governance is important to keep it secure. Because even the most secure hardware will now have a vulnerability, and that's the user. And so making sure that you have the right security practices in the organization, the right training around phishing attacks and other things that could lend itself as a problem in the organization, when again the employees an insider threat might be an issue to the most secure systems.
Yeah, so as I observed, there's actually a huge amount of cybersecurity startups that were very successful in the past decade. Many of them are pretty low key, to be honest. But especially with all the recent high profile, we can call it heist, I guess. We're seeing a lot more opportunities. What do you think about a career in cybersecurity? Like, what would that look like, and what are the skills they require different from general B2B?
That would look amazing. So if you jump into that now with both feet, because you will always be employed.
Hi, Gina. I think your sound starts to break down again.
How about now?
Oh yeah, now it's good.
Okay, so one thing about cybersecurity is to really educate yourself on what are the best tools, and if you're thinking about a company, where you have gaps. So and also what industries that you want to hone your skills in. So if you're thinking about a cybersecurity career, one of the things I would recommend is that you spend some time in federal, that you spend some time in financial services, that you spend some time in healthcare. When you hone your skills in those three areas, you will have cyber skills that will help you everywhere, right? And so you want to be where the most critical, mission critical work is being done, to be able to hone your skills. And you want to learn both sides, right? So you want to learn ethical hacking. You want to learn the fact that I spent a lot of time in my career in cybersecurity, in DOD and intelligence, understanding how the bad guys are going to try to, cause us harm, and be able to thwart that, and to be able to understand what techniques they're going to use. And so, if you want to invest in that career, go to where you're going to have the most competition and the most opportunity to see the worst of what you might come into contact with. So that way you can hone your skills and be able to use that in commercial industries.
So in summary, go to the battleground and see the battle for yourself.
Go in there, yes. Go to where the bad guys are.
Well, thank you, Gina, for sharing all these insights with us. I think we need to go to the pitches now. So Serena, do you want to schedule on that?
Yes, let's move to section 3 for today's class. We have group 10 from our class. Damien, please correct me if I pronounce your name wrong. Feel free to unmute yourself and then present your group problem.
Hi. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Okay, so my group, the idea my group came up with was a dating app, but we match people not on their pictures, but we match them randomly, and they got a chance to chat with one another anonymously. So it's more like an anonymous chat app that matches people in UC Berkeley. So the purpose of this initiative is to give people a chance to know each other more on a more personal level, and not so much on the looks. Yeah.
Yeah, so have you built a prototype yet?
Not yet. So I think because my team members do not have the technical expertise, but what we are thinking of is basically I think the MVP for this product will be just Messenger. I think we will use the Messenger API, and we will. So, for example, you can start chatting with a stranger randomly, just using your existing messaging app. So it's simple. There's no other app that you have to download, and you can start using this sort of this prototype. Yeah.
So one of the things that I would invite you to think about is the security of that, right? We're just talking about security. And one of the things that you want to make sure is that if you're offering this to people, is that how have you vetted people that are in these anonymous chats? How have you vetted the fact that they're not using this to stalk individuals, right? So those are going to be some things that you're going to need to think about as you begin to think about launching this, because the liabilities of those things are something you're going to have to think about when you start thinking about making money at this. Because as soon as you start making money, people want to get your money. And so you have to think about your liabilities that might exist in what you just described.
All right. Okay, so just to add something on also, I think we did interview some of our potential sort of users, and one thing they also mentioned is the security part. And I think my team members has brought up the point that I think our app will be more of college-based. So users will use their college email to sign up. So it's actually we can know whether or not this is a college student. Is it a real college student? Yeah. So of course there's more things to be done because it's definitely people want security in terms of things like this. Yeah. But thank you for your input. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So So definitely focus on the vetting piece of it, and then and as you can control the circle, that can help you really focus on ensuring that security from the vetting. But thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to add here. Oh, are you still here? Yeah. So there was an app called Soul. You could take a look at them. They're also they are pretty successful already. I think about a few dozen million users now. Also focused on texting strangers, but not in a more Tinder style. There's pretty a decent amount of public kind of case studies about how they grow in the early days. Could be a good reference for you guys.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, Serena, you want to bring down next group?
I think we have 3 more groups from Shua's class, and then you guys can take it from there.
Okay, I think we'll hand it off to the mental health groups. I think Carlos first.
Hi, Gina. I'll get started on my pitch right now, but as a person with an extensive technical background who has moved into leadership and is trying to go further in that direction, I appreciate your advice so much. I wish I would have had it years ago. It would have been so helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, so here goes the pitch. Did you know that people of Hispanic heritage seek mental health at a rate 50% lower than their non-Hispanic American counterparts? Now consider that when a person in Latin America seeks mental health, they can only find help 50% of the time. That's compared to 75% in North America. Our mission is to change the statistic by making it both easier and more affordable for first Spanish and then Portuguese-speaking Latin Americans to access mental health care services. We've started approaching this problem first by training mental health professionals digitally in topics that are not currently available, but are definitely needed in the Southern Hemisphere, such as harm reduction therapy for substance use and motivational interviewing. We've already trained over 40 therapists who are now helping us build an online course that we can sell to other professionals across the region. Furthermore, we're translating a course designed for patients that can help 1, provide a deeper training to therapists, 2, complement the value that they bring to their patients, and 3, give patients an affordable tool that keeps them in a therapeutic environment, even if they haven't found the right professional yet. And that speaks to our vision. Our goal is that eventually, patients will have an app on their phone through which they can access applications and education that can help them engage in and maintain self-care habits that are right for them, and that when they need to, or when they're ready to, get paired with a therapist that is also right for them. A therapist that we can make sure has all the tools and all the training at their disposal to provide a complete service to their new patient.
Are you using artificial intelligence at all in your?
Yeah, so that's my specialty is AI. And so I've kind of mapped out all that. The one thing that I know we're kind of thinking about now, and is what I personally am struggling with, though we've had our conversations in our team, is there is like training for therapists that is accredited in the United States, right? And there are a lot of trainings and educational models that exist and work in the United States, but just aren't translated and aren't brought to Latin America. And when they are, it's too formal, it's too inaccessible, it's too expensive, etc. And so that's the real struggle, right? The course that we've built so far has been one instructor, like really helping us out, an organization, a center, giving us a certification and stuff like that. But to really scale this up, I feel like we need to engage with formal education. And that's a big hurdle for sure.
Yeah, one of the things I invite you to think about is, and because you were saying keeping people in the platform even before you before you match them with a therapist, is, you know, we've had some success in thinking about helping people with depression using artificial intelligence. There are some cues that help them understand that they're struggling. There are some cues that, there's some work that I did many years ago. I don't know if the paper is still out there. It's probably not even relevant because technology is gone, but helping people in returning men and women in the service as they're returning back to their lives, to be able to help use artificial intelligence to really help them think through their mental health issues, helping them work through before they can articulate what the problem is, helping them understand more about what they're experiencing. And then, you know, certainly people that are in underrepresented groups or minority groups, you know, sometimes have cultural reasons that they don't seek mental health, right? Certainly
that's my whole
in
team.
my
That's all of
community,
us.
in the Black community. Yeah. You know, like if you say you need to talk to somebody and like, you know, go to church, right? So, you know, just, you know, so think about those things that make it comfortable for them culturally, make it comfortable for them, and being able to have something that self-directed cues and artificial intelligence may help them get comfortable before they now have to go and actually have that conversation with a doctor.
That's amazing advice. Thank you so much. I was actually looking for a way to leverage my AI background because right now everything is so like educational focused. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So Carlos, first of all, I think that was a great pitch, very concise, and you hit all the major points that an investor will be looking for. And personally, like mental health was a thesis we've been tracking for almost half a decade. And frankly, we haven't seen a lot of great results. The closest we've seen is NOM, NOM. I'm not sure if you've heard of the app, but I think they get some decent amount of user on like a behavior change on like a premium kind of model. But I think there's just so much more that can be done. And especially, you know, that's even within the English speaking. So in other languages, there's almost none. So there's a huge opportunity for you to actually write the rules. And there's so much aspects you can do. You can do the diagnose part, you can do the self-help part, you can do the one-to-one like virtual therapist part. There's just so much you can do. And you did mention about getting the right certificates. I would actually challenge you to think about whether or not that's actually necessary, because you know, hiking up that compliance route might actually delay your momentum. So if there's another way you can figure it out, may be worth thinking about. But yeah, this is a great pitch. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great feedback too. Particularly because that is our goal, is we've seen how much is available here in the United States that is just not translated. Like all it needs is just a cultural and a language translation, and we would have like our foot in the door and like a really good jumping off pad. So thank you for that as well, and for the being careful with formality. Definitely taking that into account.
Yeah, awesome. Good luck.
Thanks.
And do let us know if there's anything you need help along the journey.
Funding.
Good. Thank you.
All right, Clara, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Hi, Gina. So as you said, companies are now thinking about their employees and how they engage with each other. This is especially important now among the digital transformation. And also similarly to what Damien just said, we certainly believe this is really important in universities as well, because education is way more than the academic curriculum. So universities have to ensure that they are building this support system for students and that they build a safe space for students to have these social coalitions, both inside and outside of the classroom. So right now, the truth is that you hardly know your classmates' names, and you barely recognize them outside of the classroom because we all have to wear face masks. So we're working on a solution where, because right now, sorry about that, the truth is that no solution is tackling meeting new people without a romantic implication. So that's where we come in. We're creating a safe space where young adults can connect with each other in a non-romantic way, in a casual environment. But we have to make sure this is a safe space for everyone. And as you said, it's really like security is a super important issue in this sense. So for now, we just launched our MVP at UC Berkeley only. It's called Your Friends Are Boring. We got our first 200 users. And here students can either join or create a plan, or they can either suggest a plan if they don't feel as confident to actually host their own plan. It's a very early stage project. So right now we're just focusing on gathering as much feedback as we can and trying to figure out the product market fit. And as for the revenue model, we have to still figure out if universities are willing to invest in a platform that would be also tackling health issues among students by building this support system. We don't know if they would be interested or not. We have to figure that out. And we also have to figure out if we could have a big volume and a big stickiness or high enough to actually have a advertising model. So those are our two hypotheses. So we have many different hypotheses and a lot of doubts about the project because it's super early stage. But what we really know is that, and we're certain that in a world that every day is more virtual, we really need to build genuine social connections. And it has never been so important. Thank you.
Thanks. So a couple of things. When you mentioned revenue model, have you thought about people actually paying dues, or not the university paying, but actually the people who are participating in these communities of interest actually paying, and that can tell you who's really interested in it or not, whether or not they'll put their own money up. And then these social connections, are they around common interest, or help me understand what compels these people, other than their friends are boring, to get together with other friends?
Yeah, so for now, they are basically grouped among common interests. So if I like surfing, I can basically post someone wants to go to Pacifica tomorrow, and I can basically get people joining my plan. That's how it's working right now, based on common interest, not on people's profiles. So it's also a bit more inclusive. In terms of the business model, the problem is we really want to make sure students have this support system, and students are not the best target customer in sense of we are all broke, and that's true. So it's hard for students to actually pay for activities in the way that young professionals pay for Eventbrite or meetup events. So it's something we definitely have to figure out, because And it's probably our biggest challenge right now. It's how can we monetize if students are going to be our early adopters.
Yeah, one of the things to think about in monetizing things at universities, that's one of the, biggest part of working. Students are broke and universities don't want to spend their money. So, they want more money for research. So one of the things to think about is a partnership, right? So what strategic partnerships, what organizations, the university is capturing a lot of money in student fees in your tuition. Is there a part of that can go in creating that? So thinking about having a conversation with the provost, or thinking about having a conversation with the person who's head of student services, and their job is to provide the best and most competitive student services in any university, right? So how do you have this competitive part of a conversation and be able to think about taking it not just in your university, but other universities, because they're competing for that dollar, that tuition dollar. And so what are they adding, or what are they providing? And so that's the conversation that you can have in, how are they competing for the student dollar, is allowing them to invest in creating that environment that's different and unique on their campus.
Yeah, we're basically now really intrigued in understanding if something like this could increase the sense of belonging and the sense of community. Mm-hmm. So it probably also builds a stronger community for alumni that probably are willing to give more back to university if they feel that sense of belonging. So that could be, that gives us a bit of hope if we actually can make that relationship. We're still working on it. But yeah, and the partnership thing, we haven't thought about that, and that's amazing. We should definitely look more.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on what Gina said. I just wanted to add on what Gina said. So B2B and B2C products are very different. For B2C, you always want to think about where is your 10x improvement. For example, let's say I can organize an event, or say a hiking trip on Eventbrite, no problem. But I probably need to plan it a week ahead. I need to send out the link, and I probably send out 20 people and then 5 respond. That was the previous experience. If you can create an environment where if I am at the restaurant and I'm ordering right now, and within 20 minutes, there's gonna have 5 people show up, that is an 100x improvement over Eventbrite. And if you can deliver on that, then you have a killer product that can go 100 million people at least. So that will be definitely a real path towards a real product. And if you are going that route, then you probably want to think about the traditional B2C kind of monetization. However, if you are going to think about B2B, I do want to share about a very interesting company that we looked at and how they get money from university. So they are a company that focuses on mental health, and their pitch to the university is that if I keep the student healthy and functioning, then you will have less students dropping out. So you will have less revenue loss due to dropout. And that was a very compelling pitch to universities. And they're actually paying them, $100 and something thousand a year for their services. So it's not really a 10x improvement. It's more like a 2 or 3% improvement on their dropout. But it's very significant because there's real money attached right to it. So there are very different routes you can think about, but I love what you're doing.
Thank you. And actually, I guess the biggest difference is between the event organizations such as Eventbrite, Facebook groups, Meetup. First, the target is a bit different because they are targeting a bit of an older audience or wiser audience, let's say it like that. But but I guess the biggest difference is the immediacy of the plans. Right now, I don't want to know what I'm doing next week. If I have to buy my ticket for next week, I don't know. I want to know if tomorrow is going to be sunny. I want someone to join me right now to wherever I want to go. So we're looking for that immediacy. It also means we need a higher volume. So it's a bit more challenging. but it is definitely, like, we're all super passionate about this. So we just hope students are as well, and we can get that volume, and then everything can work properly.
Good luck to that.
Great.
Thank you.
Love it. Yep.
All right, do we want to have our last team present? I think Elena, Bianca, Jenny.
Hi. All right, so our startup idea is called Factor. Also, sorry for the background noise, but basically our idea is trying to solve the problem of mass information on the internet, and we feel like the solution lies in good journalism. And the way we want to approach this is by kind of creating a LinkedIn for journalists. So it would be a platform that our main customers would be journalism companies like NY Times or Fox or other news companies. And basically they would pay us for creating accounts for their journalists, and it would have two main uses. One is to create a sort of one-pager portfolio that summarizes a journalist's entire publishing history. And so future employers of these journalists can take a look at their publishing history and know exactly what kinds of articles they have published, any feedback from peers who would be other journalists who can give them ratings on the accuracy of their reports and the quality. And the second part of it would be a score on their articles that readers can see. So a higher score based on a journalist's history and based on the content of the article will be able to tell the reader how trustworthy an article is. So when you have a lower score, you could even flag an article based if it reaches a certain low score and say this article could potentially contain misinformation. It could have potentially false or misleading data. And it's in our other interviews, we've been told that it's been shown that if you flag an article saying that it could be potentially misleading, readers are less likely to actually believe what's in the article just because they've been told. So yeah, and readers can also take a look at the portfolios for their authors. We wanted to really bring the reader back to like knowing their journalists and knowing their sources. So yeah, any feedback would be greatly appreciated.
Well, how do you monetize this?
Basically, we would our customers would be the publishing companies.
Okay.
They would pay for a journalist account, and you would be able to sign in and have your profile if you have an email affiliated with the publishing company, and that's how you build their profile.
So this is similar to how people pay money for background checks when they're looking at employers. And
pretty much
employees. Okay. And then the relevant score, that's something I call it, what did you call it? The trustworthy score. I call it veracity score, right? So you know, how are you doing that? How are you determining the score for misinformation?
So let's see. Christina gave us a contact for someone who's actually working on AI technology that will like kind of go through an article and determine, like, find any trigger words and tell you how, if there's any like misinformation or misleading info in it. So we're thinking that we'll use some kind of technology like AI to analyze an author's articles, and also maybe blockchain to track where these articles have gone and things like that. So we would base that score on the content and the areas in which the articles are being spread.
Yeah, so a bit of feedback that I would say, or to look out for when you're looking at those kind of scoring algorithms, right? That's something that is a big part of AI, right? So because AI doesn't tell you the answer, it tells you the relevance to your question, right? So that's the scoring that we do in AI. You know, when you're looking at an article, you're probably using some natural language processing, and you're going to have some complexity in context. And so that can be a difficult part of your scoring algorithm. That could be a difficult part. So, you know, pay attention to that. People who make you believe it's really easy to do, you might want to question. And so just dig into that, because that could you know, make your actual solution a little less trustworthy when they start seeing some issues in your scoring algorithm. But, you know, I think companies that are doing background checks, I think companies could be also partnerships that you could also think about as you're thinking about expanding your revenue models. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gina, yeah, Gina, I actually feel like another comparison would be that of Gartner to the vendors.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I actually feel like maybe you don't need the news media's permission to score them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually on that, if you're training your AI to verify the accuracy, I would suggest one of the data sets you can look at is Twitter, because they've already, you know, flagged a number, like a huge data set of articles of whether or not they're fake, and you can actually just pull that data set to train for your own, and or even just to aggregate that, you know, linking whatever Twitter has already done to score the journalist. Would be an interesting experiment, but definitely misinformation is a huge problem. Love to, you know, see you guys take a stab at it.
That's a great,
Yeah,
it is a great idea. Yeah, very topical and great idea.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep that in mind. We're still kind of discussing our idea and like what directions we can go in with it. So
Yeah. So Serena, back to you.
Yes. Since we still have other activities that we need to go, I want to say thank you, Shef and Gina, to make this all happen. And then we are really greatly honored to have you speak for our class. And then, yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Gina.
For those of you who are from my class, stay, and then Jim, maybe you could share the slides, and then we can go on logistics. So here's our logistics for today. The weeknight demo day presentation sign-up sheet is due this coming Monday at 11:59 p.m. PDT. And then we also have another assignment called Proposed Solution, which is due next Thursday before class.